Ladies and gentlemen, it's Ebro in the morning. You know, sometimes I like to get a little serious. As you can see, I have 2 empty seats when I start to deal with something serious. It's a shame. No Laura Stiles, no Rosenberg. Breaks my heart. Because today we're talking about the Black Panther. Stanley Nelson is here, director of a new documentary, the Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution.
That's it.
How you doing, Stanley?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Mr. Nelson, so before we get into talking about the documentary, which is in some theaters now.
Right, it is.
And available. How long have you been doing documentary film?
That's a long time. I've been making films probably 30, 35 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Any other titles that the viewers and listeners may know?
Sure. We did a film called Freedom Summer right before this, Freedom Riders, The Murder of Emmett Till, Jonestown, The Life and Death of People's Temple.
So in the climate socially that we see today, in black communities, dealing with the police, obviously this is a very timely documentary. You know, was that what prompted you to release it now, or is this something you had been working on prior to the Mike Browns and these things heating up on media?
Yeah, I've been working on the film about 7 years. So this was something that was in the works a long time ago. And you know, I thought it was relevant 7 years ago. I mean,
right.
We were still dealing with police violence. We're still dealing with unemployment, bad schools, bad housing. So the things that the Panthers were fighting for, you know, 7 years ago, those were issues, and they've just come to be bigger issues.
7 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 50 years ago.
Right.
So now we're here. This documentary is available. You know, there's been movies about the Panthers, which I'm sure you've seen. Mm-hmm. There's been other documentaries about the Panthers. Can you articulate why yours is something more informative, more important than the ones that have come before?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really been a film that talks about the rise and fall of the Black Panther Party, and that's what we were trying to do. You know, as we were starting to produce the film, people would say, as you just did, you know, well, what about all these other films? And I would say, well, which film is that? You know, there have been films about individual Panthers. The Panthers have been part of other films, but I don't think there's been a film that's really tried to pull it all together and tell the story of the rise and fall of the Panthers. And that's what we wanted to do, because we think that the story is so relevant today, and it's not a story that's understood or known. You know, people know a little bit, you know, they know this piece or that piece, but they don't know the whole story.
And what pieces did you feel that they didn't know about the Panthers?
Well, I think one of the things that comes through the film is how young the Panthers were. The average age was 19. You know, people don't really know that these were kids, you know, these were teenagers. That the women's role, you know, that by the early 70s, the Panthers, the majority of Black Panthers were women. I don't think people know that.
That's not common knowledge.
And people know, you know, this kind of rumors about J. Edgar Hoover, you know, and the FBI, that they destroyed the Panthers. Well, in the film, you know, we use documents. We got documents from the Freedom of Information Act, and we show the documents where, you know, the FBI is saying we got to destroy this group, we got to do anything we can, you know, dirty tricks. You know, they talk about pitting Eldridge Cleaver against Huey Newton, and Huey Newton against Eldridge Cleaver, which worked, and yep. they wrote it down on paper and sent memos, and we used those memos. So I think you know, beside there are, you know, a bunch of other things, but I think those are 3 things that stand out.
Were you able to get real support from individuals that were involved at that time in this documentary, and who did you not get support from?
So we filmed probably 45 interviews, which is a lot for us in this type of film. Probably 35 or so of those are former Panthers. So we've got, you know, everybody from Emory Douglas, who was the artist for the Panthers, Erica Huggins, who was very big in the Panthers, Big Man Howard, who's one of the first Panthers, one of the Forte brothers, who was one of the first 6 Panthers. We've got Jamal Joseph from here in New York, who, you know, went to jail with the New York 21. Elaine Brown. We've got a number of Panthers, but we also have a lot of people who are what was called the rank and file, because we really wanted that to be a piece of the
nuts
film.
and bolts folks, the people working and marching and taking time off from work to be active in the community. Right,
the worker bees, you know. And one of the other things about the Panthers that people don't know is if you join the Panthers, after a while, most everybody became a full-time Panther. You were a Black Panther 24/7, so you didn't have a job that you worked and then, you know, after work you went and became a Panther. You were a Panther 24/7. You worked for the Panthers. You lived in what was called a Panther pad, you know, and lived with the Panthers. It was a full-time, all-day, all-night commitment. So we have a ton of people. probably, the person that I would have liked to have had that's not in the film, unfortunately, is Bobby Seale. We just couldn't reach an agreement to get Bobby Seale as part of the film.
Do you have any insight as to why? Is there something that he doesn't like or doesn't want to lend his brand to things that he's not sure? Because some people are protective of that. You're going to go out and sell a documentary. What am I getting out of it, et cetera, et cetera?
There's a bit of that, but I think also, Bobby Seale has been kind of talking about working on his own film for years, and it's I'm not sure if it's a documentary or a fiction piece, but he's been talking about it for years. I think that he wants that to happen.
The approach to the Black Panthers is people look at it differently. There's misunderstandings about it. People look at it as a revolutionary movement. Some people look at it as almost terrorism at home. Some people have tried to characterize the Black Panthers as, some people even look at Black Panthers as anti-white. Some people, violent, criminal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In you going down this path and creating this documentary, what truths are there about the Black Panthers, and what is the misinformation? Because I have my own perspective. I'm from the Bay Area and had family who was active. So I have my own perspective, but I'd like to hear yours.
I think one of the things about the Panthers is that they were different things at different times. They were different things in different places. So that the New York chapter was very different from the Oakland chapter, which was very different from the LA chapter.
And
which
different
was,
from the Philly chapter.
The Chicago chapter.
Newark, New Jersey chapter.
So in some ways, the Panthers were all the things you mentioned. But I think in general, one of the things that the Panthers were not was anti-white.
Right.
That's not who the Panthers were. And there's a great speech in the film from, back in the 60s where, Bobby Seale says, we don't hate anybody because of their color. We hate oppression. We hate murder of black people by the police. That's what Bobby Seale says, And I think one of the things that we do in the film, and hopefully we do it sometimes very subtly, is we show you, the Panthers speaking, Eldridge is speaking, Bobby is speaking, and the audience is 95% white,
yes.
Giving them standing ovations.
Yes.
There's a great section in the film where we talk about the Free Huey movement, and there's Asians carrying signs in Chinese,
Mexican,
and Japanese.
Everything.
And signs in Spanish, Free Huey. Free Huey was this national movement, and it was not just the Panthers. So I think that one of the things that's happened, unfortunately, is the way the Panthers have come to be remembered as this kind of, black militant group, isolationist group out there on an island by themselves. It wasn't that, but it also wasn't that at the time. I mean, people didn't think of the Panthers at the time as being that. But somehow they've come to be remembered as that.
Well, I think that's the media's portrayal of it all, and how because they were criminalized and because they were torn apart, it was easy for anyone to say anything about them because they couldn't represent themselves the right way.
Right. I mean, one of the amazing things about the Panthers is we couldn't find a picture of Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and Eldridge Cleaver together. They were never
because they weren't supposed to be together.
They were never together. They were held apart. One of the things that J. Edgar Hoover said, he had a kind of a 3-point program for destroying the Panthers, and he said he wanted to isolate the Panthers, to get them isolated by themselves. He didn't want these coalitions. That was his biggest fear, that the Panthers would form coalitions with other groups.
Do you and were you able to get into, because now we're watching the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And some of this stuff is happening to that movement,
right?
Where you see them arguing. This one says, "Oh, I started Black Lives Matter," and this one over here saying, "Well, we're the Seattle chapter and we're gonna do X, Y, Z," and they go and do something, and this one over here is like, "Nah, you're doing the wrong thing. You shouldn't be doing." Were you able to track that in the documentary as an example? Because one of the reasons I wanted you to come up, because you have young people active right now, and some of the similar strategies will be used to get, because when people are young, they don't have as much money. They have to find ways to find resources, find support. You have social media and all these other things. It's easy for people to get distracted away from their goals and away from their initiatives by noise. Were you able to dig into that into the documentary?
Yeah, I mean, we don't go into the present movement, but for the Panthers, yeah, I mean, we go into the destruction of the Panthers by J. Edgar Hoover and some of the squabbles that destroyed the Panthers. I mean, that was a big part of what destroyed the Panthers, and we hope that for young people, it can be a cautionary tale. That you can see how the Panthers were destroyed, and understand that if you have any kind of movement, any kind of organization, you have to have systems in place to solve these squabbles, because they're gonna come.
And a lot of times over money.
Yeah, over money, and power.
Yeah.
And which section of the country controls what, and it's gonna happen. So you need to have those systems in place, and I think the Black Panther story can be a real cautionary tale. For that. One of the things that we're hoping is that the Panthers are not a model for today, for the movements of today.
It was a different time.
These are different times, but but we're hoping that the Panther story can be an inspiration for young people and for the movements today, because we're in a special time. We're in a real special time. I made a film, Freedom Summer, that we had out about a year ago. And every time we'd screen it, somebody would stand up and say, well, what's wrong with young people? Young people aren't doing anything. They're so apathetic. We don't get that at all today. Nobody stands up and says young people are apathetic.
Right.
Because we're in the middle of I hope, the beginning of a change where young people are very, very active and are really pushing for change.
Stanley Nelson, it was a pleasure talking to you. The documentary about the Black Panthers, please look it up. Once it's out of theaters, I'm sure it's going to move to Netflix and it'll be available in these other places, or is it available there now?
No, it's not available now. It'll be on PBS in February, and at that point it goes on sale. But I have to say this: if I don't, I'll be killed. That you can,
that's not happening.
Yeah, it might actually, it might happen. You can follow us on Panthers Doc, and we're on all social media, and you can follow us and find more about the film and ways that you can see it.
The new Black Panther Party, which is active out there today, any conversations with them, because obviously there are people from the original movement that don't like what's happening with the way the name is being used today. Did you even go down that road, or this was completely focused on? It's
completely focused on the Black Panther Party of old. I mean, I think that the new Black Panther Party is something different. It's not, they're in general, there's no connection between new Black Panther Party and the Black Panther Party of the 60s and the 70s.
And in the future, watching what's happening now with the activism, is what's happening now interesting to you, where it wouldn't take 40 years for someone to document this? What's happening today? I
think people are documenting it, today. There's a bunch of films in the pipeline,
So you're hearing and seeing stuff already being made.
Oh yeah. One of the things that I do is we have what's called the Producers Lab, and we're working with 20 producers, all over the country to make films. And one of them is from a group that is from St. Louis and Ferguson, and has been documenting what's going on there from the beginning.
Also, I'd like to know from you who have been making documentary films for a long time, and I'm sure you've seen this political activism for many years. What is your opinion of what's happening today? Do you have a personal opinion? Because you see so much, right? Do you like what you see? What mistakes are being made, and what can be done maybe better?
I love what I see. I mean, everywhere we go, our audience are made up of half the people in the audience are very, very young, and they come to the front and sit in the front rows, and they're there for discussion. One of the things that we do is we do a lot of Q&A for the film. So they're there, and so I love the fact that young people are involved. And who knows about mistakes? That's what a mistake is. You don't know it's a mistake until it all plays out.
That's right.
So it's got to play out. But they, as Panthers have said, we brought Panthers to screenings all over the country. It's young people's turn, and they've got to do what they do. Hopefully they can be inspired from the past, they can learn from the past, but ultimately it's their movement now.